Everyone, I don't know if it will be okay for you all for me to speak from here. So I'll just try. Just want my voice to project enough towards you. So we're going to present how we move our company website to Drupal 8. The presenters are going to be Dave Vasilevsky and jorgediaz. I'm going to be doing most of the talk because Dave is kind of taking care of his voice. He's going to have another talk tomorrow. And we drove all the way to Montreal here, and it's a very long trip. So, okay, I'm first going to start with who we are. We're a small Drupal consulting and training development company based in Montreal. It was founded in 2007 by Alex and Susan Derishaf, who just arrived. And we usually help organizations to build awesome Drupal websites and training and consulting their own development projects. Today we'll be standing here. There's Dave. He's been working with the Open Web for 5 years already. He's a backend developer and DevOps since 2006. My name is jorgediaz. I've been working with Drupal something like since 8 years ago, and I'm mostly focused on front-end development and theme. I always use this slide to relax. I was born in Havana 30 years ago, but Drupal brought me to Montreal. Yeah, it results pretty good when I want to relax in presentations. So we specialize in Drupal setups. We have a standard Drupal website developed among these years, and we also been working with huge clients like All Single Line. We build a whole certification platform for the products. We have worked with some big fish, just like Land Foundation, Canada government, and some others you can see on the screen. I won't go into too much detail. But suddenly on December last year, we got a new customer, ourselves, for a new web redesign projects of our own company website. So in the next 45 minutes, me and Dave will be sort of explaining how we did this entire process of moving our existing Drupal website to Drupal 8. So I will first introduce how was our Drupal 7 website. Okay, this website was built in 2011. It has mostly trainings and blog posts. It was initially created in Drupal 6 2 years before, and then we migrated it to V7. It has an acceptable volume of traffic, mostly for SEO or blog posts and trainings. It's actually the core of our training program. Most of the schedule, training descriptions, and the gateway to Eventbrite, where we actually sell the tickets. It's right on the website. And at that moment, it wasn't ready for mobile devices. I mean, it's 2011. It wasn't that trendy to have a responsive website then. So a new redesign was already finished. This is our old website, and this is how our new one was supposed to be seen. So new designs then became arriving too. I mean, to our homepage, or landing training page, or courses page, or projects, the team page, or blog posts, and even our training course page. So then we start working on it. We decided to go agile, as we've done in all the rest of the projects. We actually used 3 tools for it. The first one is Redmine, which is pretty effective to track all issues, logs, and progress online. We also use a lot of sticky notes. That's what it means.
And whiteboards.
And whiteboards, yeah. And we have a third tool. Anyone can guess which one is? Well, it's an actual living project manager.
In English, it's not so good to call something
a tool.
So, and that way I get to introduce Pierre, who is our project manager. He comes from a French multinational company called Cavi, and he has experience managing web projects and online commerce projects. So we organized our project actually in a set of sprints, where we first, every week, we set up planning, an estimation of each set of tasks. Then we prioritize all of them. We start developing. We did our tests, and then we were deploying. So we did a general estimate of 4 sprints to go live, and actually we could do it. So I will now go to more technical details in terms of how we built it and how we did it. So I will start with the dev environment. This is something that is becoming really trendy in terms of web development. We set up a vagrant environment on each one of our desktop computers, and we were running Docker containers inside of it. And each one of these Docker containers is running a web stack environment where we will put in Drupal on top of it. So, I mean, the blue engine stuff means Drush. The rest I'm pretty sure most of you know about it. Apache, MySQL, PHP, and Composer, Drush, and our version control system that is based on Git 2. So this approach is pretty good because we have this system replicated in all of our computers, allowing us to have a standard way of developing and avoiding the classic issue that this works in my computer and I don't know why it's not working here now. So then I'm gonna talk about the content flow strategy. So first, we had an old Drupal 7 website. I mean old because it was built some time ago. It's a reference we're just gonna use. Oh, sorry, something. Okay, thanks, Dave. Okay, the Drupal 7 website was populated by mostly training, tags, and blog posts that we would like to preserve in terms of keeping our SEO ranking or blog posting history. And we had a set of features, not Drupal features, I mean website features, like contact web forms, distance integration, and multilingual support we wanted to keep to. We had a set of users in our database, and we had the actual issue, let's call it that way, that we create new content every week. So we have to deal with it. And now, on the new website, we're going to have new content that's not coming from the old one, like, for example, 3 navigation menus, in navigation, footer, and subsections, and some other places. We're going to have new content, actually, testimonials and team member info, just to mention 2. We were going to improve the existing content that we already have in the old Drupal 7 websites. We were going to build new marketing blocks for landing pages. And we wanted to have fully multilingual support in the whole website, content-wide and UI-wide. And plus, having a responsive website because ours wasn't. So then we started thinking about how to deal with these 3 different set of aspects in a new project, taking into account that the existing content was going to be continuously updated, and so the same with the new one, because we couldn't be waiting for the new content to be ready to start moving into a new website. So the big deal was how to handle this when we have this distributed way of developing. It was really our main concern at that point. So the first point, we think, well, maybe having a main database and keep everyone in sync using it, but it's not a healthy approach to develop because too many content, too many structure changes going into the same place. So we decided to keep the Docker nice way of doing stuff. Everything is inside of one of the containers. So here's the question again, how to keep them all in sync? So we came with an initial idea. Okay, we do a migration at first, and then everyone's supposed to be updated. But how about when we will start doing new stuff and creating new content on each one of our computers, how we will synchronize all the data at the same time? So maybe having some kind of version control of our database, but that's not a clean approach. So we started looking for a different way to do the version control and managing our migration process. So then we came into the point that we need to focus on it, the migration process actually. So from here on, Dave's going to continue working on it. So Dave.
Thanks. So, sorry. So yeah, we decided that migrations were going to be an important part of our site, that we'd be doing migrations from D7. And then we also realized that we're going to need to migrate all this new content. And so we set up something that we called our content staging environment. And that's basically a whole other Drupal 8 site that all it contains is content. It doesn't really have a theme. It doesn't really have any custom code in it. It's just a place where we can put all of our content, and then we can pull it into D8 with migrations, the same way that we pull content into D7. And so then in D7, we could just do a migration by running a drush command. And in this case, we're migrating all of our D7 content. And so you can see the output here, that we create a whole bunch of items. We have hundreds of blog posts, and they all import fine. One interesting thing we did here is that when we import all these things, the reference files come in too, based on some custom code we wrote, because by default, Drupal 8 won't do that. So then we had a second set of migrations that were for our staging site. So these would migrate all the different bits of content from that site. And it wasn't just content, not just nodes. We had some nodes. We had, for example, here you see client nodes and training nodes, among others. But we also had other bits of things that are considered content. Basically anything that's not configuration, we would take from that site. So menus we would import. We'd import redirects. We'd import custom blocks. Basically anything that you can't export as config, we would import from the staging site. So then we had the question of, when do we want to do these migrations? Do we just want to do one migration from D7 to D8 and then start working on the site from there, having a common site? And we decided not to do that. Instead, we're going to do the migrations anytime we need them. Every time we do a build, we'll do the migrations all over again from D7 and from staging. And this means that that everybody has the same environment locally, and that we can work on the migrations to fix any problems that we have. If the initial migration didn't go well, we could work on it from there. And so there were a lot of different times when we found it was useful to do another migration. Maybe we'd put some new content together, and we'd want to migrate that. Or maybe we'd fix some parts of our migration. We had problems with paths in some nodes, so we could do another migration then. Or maybe we had new content on prod if somebody created a new blog post or a new training. And we could do another migration then. You can just keep doing them as you get new content. So here's an example of one of these incremental migrations. That in this case, we updated some content on staging, and then we did another migration. We ran the migrations again. And this time you can notice that nothing was created, right? It says 0 created everywhere now, but a whole lot of stuff was updated. And so we just continue to update things as we go. But it's still a little puzzling. Like, why do we need this whole staging? Because it's complex, right? It means we have a whole extra site. It means we have to manage all these migrations, which are not always easy to write. But we have a bunch of different reasons why we did this. First of all, often the initial information architecture that you come up with for a site, the initial structure of the site, is not really how it ends up. Maybe you thought something would be one content type, and then later you change your mind and decide it should be two. Maybe something started as a text field, and then it ends up being a taxonomy in the end. It can be really hard to make those kinds of changes when you have all your live content on your production site or on a staging site. But when you have migrations, they can solve this problem. You can on your staging site, you can leave your content however it used to be. You can still have one content type there, but then your migrations will just migrate it into two separate types. It provides a level of, like a little barrier between them, so you can make changes on the real site without having to make them to your content, or without having to munge your content. It also means that when you add content and then delete content, when you make changes to your site, sometimes you leave cruft on a site if it's live. And we don't want to have that. We want to have a clean site with a clean database. So by redoing the migrations on every build, we arrange that. Thank you, Suzanne. And finally, and finally, if we're currently having to change anything on the staging site, it never interferes with any of the development that's going on, because all the migrations that are happening on people's individual laptops or on rebuilds of the site. We never have a situation where we have to tell people, okay, stop working on content right now. So a lot of this was stuff that we could do with functionality that exists in Drupal core. Migrating D7 to D8 is in core. Migrating from D8 to D8 is not strictly in core, but it's not hard to do. There's a REST module that lets you create views that just dump content into JSON, which you can then migrate pretty easily with the migrate module. But there were a lot of things that we had to do to make this really work, because Drupal 8 is still pretty early, and there's still a bunch of things that are a little bit broken. So multilingual migrations was a big one that doesn't really work yet. We did some sort of hacks. We're working on getting it into core in the future so that everybody has that. Menu links. There's no good way to export menu links in D8 yet, and definitely no good way to import them. And so we were able to put some custom code together to do that. Paths are difficult to export from D7 right now, and even difficult to export from D8. So if you want your nodes to have a custom path instead of /node/21 or something like that, you need some custom code for that. I mentioned already that we did some magic with reference files to make sure that when we upgraded to D8, we didn't take all the files on our D7 site, because a lot of them were old content that we didn't care about. We only took the files that were referenced by our blog posts, by things that we were migrating. Obviously, we wanted our staging site to be secret. We don't want people to see the content we're putting there. So we password protected it, and we had to have the ability to, for migrate, to know the password and get through the password so we can contact the staging site. And then finally, we did a lot of interface translation, and there's currently no way in D8 to export and import that so that you can keep it when you do a rebuild. I think somebody's working on it in a locale drush module, but it's not there yet. So we built a custom tool for that. We'd be happy to talk to any of you about any of these things if you want to know how we did it or want to contribute your solutions. And then one issue we had is when you're doing all these migrations, you have to make sure that you're migrating everything that you want to migrate and that everything is on the new site that used to be on the old site. You don't want there to be broken links. It's really bad for SEO. And so we use this tool that we developed internally called SiteDiff that compares two sites. And in this case, we used it to try to make sure that no links were missing and that we could, everything that was on the old site, we had a version on the new site. I'll be talking more about that tomorrow a little if anyone wants to come to my other talk. And now we're going to continue talking about our development workflow.
Thanks, Dave. So, okay, about the development workflow we follow. We consider the project to be divided into two different Git repos. And the first one, we call it the deploy repo, where we put all the setup of building the Docker environment for the website. And the second one that it's included inside of this, and a separate repo, is the Drupal site. So in the first one, mentioned before, we just have all the Docker set up and all the loading code for fetching all the components required to set up the environment, but not including all those just Docker setup. And the second one what's on top of the file. But we have two separate Drupal sites that we were, sorry?
Drupal 8 sites.
Yeah, Drupal 8 sites that we were managing from the same Drupal. And this is thanks to configuration management in Drupal 8. So we could export completely the staging site to a staging folder and decide one to a different one. So this time we do the build. In the staging case, we just load one configuration, and in the dev environment, we load the other one. So in terms of the Drupal site building, now going into specifically the website we built. Right now, there's, as Dave mentioned, it's pretty early in the contrib environment of modules. So these are sort of modules that are more up to date in alpha and beta stage. So we choose to work in Bootstrap theme. Sorry, I said modules, it's modules and themes. This is the Bootstrap theme, the one we use as a base theme. We did our development coding mostly in the layer of Sass and Trig, and then we use all the theme and presentation layer with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now on the modules side, these are just some of the modules that are sort of in the same situation, ready and almost ready to go. Just to show some of them. It doesn't mean that we used all of them, it's just showing sort of the actual state of art in Drupal 8 modules, the 3 modules. So we consider the site to be using mostly views, contact forms, blocks for blocks management, multilingual support, and some other modules from the core. And from the contrib environment, we use the Bootstrap theme, context storage, and content blocks to sort of solve the missing web form module functionality. We use discus, redirects, analytics, image effects, and some others. And in terms of the actual website building, we set it up to be working, to be completely handle all these elements to be stored in our config file. Then, of course, it's going to be then managed by our version control system. So, going to the actual results. Well, we got the website completely migrated to Drupal 8. This is actually how it seems now. I mean, the first screenshot that I showed at the beginning of the presentation are actually screenshots of the website right now. We could go live without many issues. The second result is that the Docker approach, once again, confirmed it's really good to work in web development environments, and mostly in this, for our experience in Drupal, it's pretty effective. For all our team with distributed environments, it has proven to be really amazing. And third result, it's the content staging concept, which has proven to be effective enough to solve the issue we had. And actually, we've been even thinking on future ways of using it, like something like content staging phases, where we have our actual site in a phase where we can say that it's going to be in the staging 2 website, and we can write all the migrations to a new product website, and have our customers, instead of working on a pretty basic content staging environment, to be working on an almost finished or completely finished staging environment, and we can continue working on the second one. So that's it. Thanks a lot for your attention. We've been more than pleased to answer any question.
So you had 2 repositories, one for the Docker configuration and one for the site?
Yeah. That's right.
So what is the thought process on that? Is that Docker server environment used on other sites, or why was that separation?
Yeah, it lets us basically use a similar Docker configuration on multiple sites, even as one site differs. So often if we do something like setting up Solar, we'll put that in the Docker config, and then we can put that in multiple sites. And we don't have to worry about scattering Solar config in the middle of our Drupal PHP files.
We haven't played with Docker, but we're using VirtualBox, and one of the challenges that we run into is just the performance of doing development with VirtualBox seems slow. Have you noticed is there a benefit to Vagrant and Docker? Is it faster?
Yeah, well, can you talk about which part is slow for you?
Just accessing the actual site to click and change configurations.
Really? Okay.
It's just it's not as performant as a dedicated server would be.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as performant as a dedicated server, even in Docker, but we found that it's pretty acceptable, and there's some pretty obvious ways to speed it up as well, which, if we ever need them, we can look into. I can talk to you more about that after.
I think that most beginners who try developing inside of VirtualBox probably Vagrant use the shared folder.
Oh, yeah.
Project outside of your virtual machine shared, not the project deployed in the virtual machine. The VirtualBox's shared folder implementation is what's causing a very significant performance hit. You just don't use that feature.
Yeah.
We deploy inside of the VirtualBox, but not using the VirtualBox share.
And to edit the code, we'll use either like console editors or something called shushfs, which lets you mount content over shush. So when you shush into your virtual machine, you can just access the file system from outside. Yeah. Thanks, Alex. That was a good point. Does anybody else have a question? Yeah?
You mentioned a tool called Cytec. Is it like GitHub or somewhere else? Or
Yeah, it's on GitHub. It's at evolvingweb/sitediff. Oh, yeah. Do you want to bring up the website?
It's evolving web.
Oh, thank
Dot,
you.
dot site. No, slash
Yeah.
site. But in GitHub.
GitHub.
Me?
I think that should be it. We're not going.
It's
It's
evolving
MidCamp.
web/site diff
Oh, thank you.
on GitHub.com.
There we go. So there's some documentation, and you can see how to get started with it. Yeah?
I have another question. So you have a staging site where you work all the content that you're creating, developing the website. So for what I understand that you have like migration from the current design site to the 8. But then like, are you entering new content in beta or staging version of your Drupal 8 site? So what is that, like the new content, where is it coming from? Is it coming
Yeah,
from?
so we have 3 sites. Oh, you have the slide. Great. So the new content goes in the one in the upper right there, in our staging environment, which is a Drupal 8 site, but a very basic one. It doesn't have a theme. It doesn't really have any custom modules. It's just to store content.
And you also use migration to and is it like,
Yeah.
you said that there is no Drupal migration, so is that views?
Yeah, so we use views to export JSON using the REST module, which is built into Drupal core now. And then we can just do JSON migrations. So it works okay. No problem. Thanks for the question.
Any other question?
Since there's more time, maybe you guys can show a screenshot of Cytec and explain how it works a little bit better.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I think there's 20 something that's left on the top.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. So I think, do we have some screenshots here? Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
So the basic idea with SiteDiff is that you can compare 2 sites, and then you get a comparison like this that shows you, this is a kind of old screenshot, but anyway, it shows you all the things that have changed. Generally, you want things to be green. In this example, not much is green, so it means a lot has changed. Oh, that's better. So yeah, it lets you see, this one. Yeah, so you see there's a diff button, so that'll show you the actual differences that happened, that you saw, and the difference itself will look something like this. in this case, you can see that the difference doesn't really matter. It's just a view DOM ID. So we have a bunch of rules that can exclude things like this that don't really matter. So when you do your diff, you only see things that you care about, only see differences that you care about. It's really great when you're doing something like an upgrade. Again, I'll be talking about it tomorrow, because if you want to make sure that everything is the same except for like bits of your theme, let's say, you can do that. You can check that all the content is the same.
Actually, if you're missing pages, it will notice you.
Yeah. So all the, you see there's a bunch of these that are yellow and say 404. And so that's what we use to check links. If there was a link that existed, it'll crawl your whole site. Like it'll find all the pages on your old site. And if there's any page that it doesn't find on the new site, it'll give you a yellow line like this. And then you know, hey, we forgot to fill this space with content. Either we forgot to migrate it, or we forgot to replace it with new content because it's something that we don't want, or we forgot to add a redirect so it'll go somewhere useful. And then we can fix it. And it's really great for your project manager because they can just go down this list and say, you know, oh, here's something that has to be fixed, here's something that has to be fixed, instead of having this intractable problem of sites are different and we don't know how. So we find it really useful.
For the migration, were those built all in Drupal 8, pulling the data in?
Yes.
From either the Drupal 7 site or the Drupal 8 site?
That's right.
Yeah?
So basically in Drupal 8, you based on the migration, you wrote actually like some migrating classes or something like that? Or it's built in Drupal?
So
migration?
it was mostly built-in stuff. In Drupal 8 now, you can do migrations by writing YAML files that go in your site configuration. Some of this is going to change in 8.1. I don't know how much, so I can't. But I think you'll still be able to do that. To
Are
write.
you writing like a migrate just to get to that staging site and then a migrate to the other site?
No, like the staging site only has new content. So the old content we do a migrate from D7 straight to the new site.
Oh.
And then new content we do a migration from our staging site to the new site. So it's two sets of migrations. And yeah, like I said, it's mostly built in, but there's some stuff that's custom, and I'd be happy to talk to you about that after if you want. Yeah?
These tools assumes that you keep the same URLs, or it can like identify patterns, like this pattern is now this, so match the URLs, or it is like a straight URL if it doesn't exist with other.
Yeah, it's a straight URL comparison in this case, because for SEO purposes, it's really important to keep all URLs working. If you have a URL and you replace it with another URL that's different, and you don't have a redirect, Google will penalize you, and it's generally not great. So it's a lot better to have redirects and make sure those exist.
I think it should be added that on this particular project, we didn't need to use the diff feature, we just needed to use the crawl feature and see what on the new site gives a 404. So it was really just run the crawl, look at the list of errors, okay, no need to analyze the diffs. This is, and it turns out we missed a lot. and this was yesterday. So I think, I don't know if you guys want to talk about what was responsible for most of our 404s.
Yeah, that's a good point. So one of the things that's a big problem is if you link to content without a path, without a custom alias. If you're using /load/35 on your site everywhere, it's going to be pretty annoying to get that working on a new site, especially if you build it from scratch. You can migrate stuff with the same node IDs. It's a little weird. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it unless you have to. But we had a lot of links to taxonomy feeds, actually, like tag feeds that were using the node IDs and would break. I'm not really sure what a good fix for that is if you already have a site that has the IDs in the URLs. My advice is don't do that if you can help it. We're not sure how to solve it yet, actually. We considered using redirects, but it gets kind of weird because those URLs do exist on your new site too, so now you're redirecting away from them. We're not sure what the right solution is.
Dave, I think I was referring to the more interesting set of problems having to do with path pages that change their paths at some point.
Oh, the path auto stuff. Okay, yeah, if you're using path auto.
Everyone's using path auto.
Okay, because you're all using path auto. A feature of Path Auto, which you may or may not have on, is that when you change the title, when you edit an existing page and you change the title, it'll change the slug. It'll basically change the URL. And then another feature is that it will add a redirect, if you ask it to, from the old one to the new one. Which now means that you have some pages which have multiple paths that all point to them. But only one of them is considered that page's path by Drupal. If you ask Drupal, what is the path of this page? It will give you just one, but there's really many of them. And if you might have linked to those in the past, and you have to make sure to get them somehow. We're still not 100% sure how to solve this, but I have an idea. Yeah, basically you have to do some weird stuff to the Drupal 7DB and get all these extra paths out and import them. It's not a great situation. Hopefully we can figure out something better and propose it to core one of these days.
But you need to write some sort of migration specifically for Path Auto aliases that
No, I think you do it as part of the node migration.
Okay.
So if you have a simple site and you're not adding new content and you're just doing like the default Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 migration, it will bring those in. But I mean, most people don't have a site that simple. They use contrib modules. They have a theme. Most people have a theme. They have some, custom things that just won't work with that. So
if I understand the Drupal 8 migration process correctly, with the YAML files, you're supposed to be able to make a configuration change and just synchronize, have it update, versus having to start with a fresh database and then rerun the migration?
yeah, so it depends. Often you can make a change to the migration via the YAML files, and then just do another migration and it'll update. That happens some of the time. But with bigger changes, sometimes it won't. But it's still much faster to just revert an entire one migration. As you saw on one of the previous slides. Do you want to bring it up? One of the.
You want to show the.
Oh yeah. So this is a YAML file. I don't know how easy it is to see. Do you have Zoom enabled?
Opening
Sublime? Okay. So this is what a migration file looks like. It's a YAML file. In this case, we're telling it like where to get the content from. This is like the path. And then we map fields. We say like take the title from the title. And then we have some custom things in here. Like in this case, this is a menu link one. So we have some custom stuff about menus in it. So for small things, like if we were changing where it got the weight from, let's say, like if it turned out that the weight field on our source wasn't actually called weight, it was called like order, then we could change that, and that would probably import okay. It would just update the existing items. But you can have, we have many migrations, and some of them are more complicated. If you have one that like looks at a field and then processes the field, to look for images. It'll look at a field, it'll download images that it needs, and then it'll like just import the node, let's say, that contains the image. So if you change what the image actually is on the source site, it'll just see that the path of the image is the same potentially, and it won't complain. It'll think nothing happened. So in that case, you'd have to roll it back and re-import. But still, doing that for one migration out of, what do we have, 30 or something now, is so much faster than rebuilding your site from scratch.
Okay, so you did split up the content into separate migrations?
Yeah, separate content types, taxonomies, And even so, like doing a rebuild is not that difficult, given that we have it all Dockerized. You just type, do a build, and it just does a build, and you don't worry about it. Thanks, Jorge. Yeah.
Just a prompt. This was a pretty simple site with a very fixed amount of control modules. What's your intuition about it? You have like a site with a little more moving parts. How feasible with this kind?
It depends what they do, I would say. If you have, I think if you have more modules on your site that are sort of workflow, that add features to the site, it'll be even better doing it this way, because it'll be great to have a staging site where you can just work on content independent of whether those features are working or not. If somebody breaks one of these features, like the scheduler module, if scheduler breaks, it won't affect your staging content, and that'll be great. The problem is with stuff, actually scheduler might be an example of a problem. The problem is with stuff that introduces new data. So if you're using new data types, essentially, if you're relying on, indeed it contains a lot. It has like a telephone field, it has email fields, but if something introduces a new kind of field, like maybe a geographical location field, you're going to need that module on your staging site too, so that on your content staging site, so that you can add that data. So you'd have to go through your list of modules and figure out what adds data and what doesn't. The one place where the staging strategy might be really annoying is preview on that site looks really bad because you don't have your theme, and like nothing looks the way it should, which is fine for most content. But if you have a very dynamic site, it might be really hard to work on it that way. And that's where we get to the thing that Jorge, thank you, you knew exactly what I was thinking of. The thing that Jorge was talking about, where once you reach a certain point of stability in your information architecture, you could say, you know what, we're going to do we're going to separate our project into phases. And in the first phase, we're going to use our kind of ugly staging environment and put content there. But once we feel like we have a good handle on the information architecture, we're going to freeze it. We're going to say, this is good. And then we're going to do a final build of phase 1 and declare that the results of that build, this new staging site for phase 2. And so it means you'd have to build some more migrations, but they'd be really simple migrations because everything would be the same on that staging site and your new production site.
At least if you have any kind of small architecture change with some data that initially was a field and then you move it into the example.
Yeah. So it's, and then once you had something like that set up, then like preview would look nice and your content would hopefully, like, and dynamic features where, you know, I guess I don't have node queues anymore, but things like that would be a lot easier to get working. How are you?
We're good.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was nice. That was actually just my intent of the question, which was in terms of in general the Drupal contrib module space. This has very few contrib modules, so going to Drupal 8 is feasible at this time. I was wondering if you guys wanted to talk about some limitations or some gotchas that we came across along the way that people here with more contrib
Oh, I see. Not about the staging part.
should be aware of. Not specifically related to the staging work, but just going to Drupal 8.
Okay.
I don't get the question. Do you mind, please?
Basically, like what modules aren't ready and what do we do about that?
I think it depends on the project. I mean, most of these modules are maybe more dependent. I mean, for example, token and path auto was something like a high priority for this Acquia acceleration program of moving D7 to D8 modules, because of something like they don't want to happen the same that happened in 2011 when Drupal 7 was released and no one started using it after views was included on it. So they say, okay, we will include views, but even like that, most of, and I would say 90% of Drupal projects are okay with views, but also with stuff like token and path auto. And some other modules.
We did have some modules that were missing, right? We had web form. It's still not really ready.
Yeah, there's some kind of alternatives to web form. I mean,
we're using the contact form, which is okay for us, but for other people it might not be. Panels isn't ready.
Yeah, panels not ready. Context is not ready. So you have to look at all modules and all blocks in the block page, which is kind of annoying because you need to differentiate them just by the path instead of having some more contextual place of putting blocks. Display suite is pretty advanced. View slideshow, it's one of the modules that was pushed forward.
What else is missing then?
I would say I don't know, all these are stable or at least an alpha or beta release. Which are
Field collections isn't
popular.
ready. I think they're working on inline entity form as a replacement for that.
Context. I mean, from my experience, I think context is the one that is hurting most, not having it ready. Meta tag. Okay, all this ready.
Yeah.
When you find an alternative, is it pretty straightforward to write the migration then for that?
It can be. It depends on. I mean, we didn't have too many troubles on this project because there weren't too many very custom fields that we were using. It might get kind of weird if you were using something like NodeQ that I don't think has been the subject of much recent development at all. So it might not have like an appropriate replacement. It might not have an easy way to even like get the data from migrate. So you'd have to do some custom work in that case. All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.